Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here today. My questions are to do with the PFAS contamination of our food chain. Your Meat and Livestock Australia function is to foster the long-term prosperity of the Australian red meat industry. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. One of the significant challenges to this industry is the increasing presence of PFAS in the red meat supply chain. Does Meat and Livestock Australia have an advisory on PFAS contamination of cattle?
Senator, with respect, I think it's a very limited threat, and I think the publicity and push of that issue from a very small number of producers doesn't accurately represent the threat. I think our industry is incredibly conscious of not just our biosecurity reputation, but our responsibility to ensure that we provide safe and wholesome product to all of our customers globally, which go to 100 markets globally. This issue is something which has been extensively evaluated by the authorities responsible, and while we are aware of it, it's certainly an issue that is being monitored on an ongoing basis.
Who are those authorities responsible?
So, as far as the level or potential contamination, the responsibility for making decisions about potential contamination would sit with groups like SafeMeat, and the FSANZ would actually set the requirements or the levels that would have to be triggered for it to be a challenge.
That's the Food Standards,
Australia New Zealand Food Standards, that's correct.
Okay, we'll come back to them. I would disagree with you because I'm not talking about FSANZ, but other authorities supposed to be overseeing this PFAS issue are not doing their job. That's quite clear from the questions we've asked. So, next question, are you aware the Food Standards Australia has PFAS regulations under review, and later this year there may be maximum PFAS levels specified that your breeders will need to act on? I think that it's timetabled at the moment to come out early September 2021, but given that I think the earlier ones are behind it, probably be later this year?
No, Senator, that's something that's their responsibility, and if there's need to support them in providing information or technical support for that, I'm sure they'll contact us, but no.
I'm very concerned about the threats to our export industry. The Australian beef industry is worth $28 billion a year, and the export portion of that is $17.2 billion, which makes it one hell of a big industry. So are you aware that the European Union have now enacted a recommendation of 6 micrograms of PFAS per kilogram of body weight as a recommended maximum daily intake, a figure that mandates the effective elimination of PFAS from meat?
No, Senator. The setting of MRLs is not something that comes under our responsibility.
You're not aware of it?
No.
Thank you. Does Meat and Livestock Australia consider that our $28 billion a year meat industry might be headed for a substantial disruption caused by these new PFAS limits in Australia and in our major export markets?
No, Senator, I don't. I think it's important for context. So this can sound quite significant, but I think it's important that these are very, very isolated potential incidents. So that's so no is the answer to your question. No.
Have you considered what a PFAS scare may do to our livestock industry? Have you done any modelling or risk assessment at all?
So we're certainly aware of the potential of what those scares could do, and of course as a result of that we're conscious of or aware of, I'm assuming you're talking about the specific issue which keeps coming up regardless of the support that gets provided to that producer. So yes, we are aware of what the potential of those scares can do, and it is disappointing that an individual, regardless of the disproportionate support they get from many sectors of the industry, continue down this path.
Well, I've got letters in front of me from the Charolais Society of Australia, the Australian Brahman Breeders Association, and the Australian Registered Cattle Breeders Association. They've all called on the government to relocate the graziers from affected properties to remove PFAS from the food chain. They're worried about what will happen if that is detected in the food chain. The Australian Registered Cattle Breeders Association agree and added that failure to fix this problem can only lead to a disaster for the Australian meat industry. Why has Meat and Livestock Australia ignored your own breeders' recommendations?
All due respect, Senator, those letters haven't... I don't think those letters have come to us, but also breed societies whose primary responsibility is the record keeping of purebred livestock are not the people we should be relying on for information around...
What about the other two?
Chemical. They all are. All three of them are. Breed societies and the registered cattle breeders are the peak organisation for the breed societies.
I accept that. So, aren't they though concerned about the future of their industry?
I'm sure they could be made concerned, Minister, if they received the representations that we have received from the producer that I assume we're still talking about the same one. I can imagine they would be concerned, but they're not.
I'm aware of several producers.
There's a main producer that's raised this a number of times and have said they would take this further.
I wouldn't dismiss it because you're counting one. There are several, and they're deeply concerned not only about their own livelihoods, they're concerned about the whole industry. It's palpable, you can see it in them. Sorry,
Senator, I didn't mean to sound dismissive. We're not being dismissive at all. I think the point I'm obviously not making well is it's very important that we appreciate from a biosecurity and food safety point of view in our industry, we have incredibly good systems in place, and we have the authorities like Fazans and Safe Meat who have responsibility for this, and we lean very heavily on their authority and expertise to manage this issue. And if it becomes more of a policy issue, then that's a representative organisation responsibility. We absolutely will support any of those if there's more technical information required, and we do take on board these issues every time they are raised, but we all have a responsibility to rely on the authorities who have the expertise and responsibility for this, which is what we try and do.
I've been through various types of diet in my years on the planet. In the last few years, I've become completely meat eater. That's all I eat. So it's very important to me personally, to my family, but especially more so in my responsibilities as a senator representing constituents. And I'm not just talking about people who have got PFAS problems themselves, but people in the beef industry, because it's a very important industry to our whole state and our country. And I'm deeply concerned what would happen if this gets out of hand, if we don't head it off. So has Meat and Livestock Australia considered that of all the stakeholders in this industry, you are the best situated to lead a whole of industry response to the PFAS issue? That solution being to relocate farmers from land destroyed by PFAS pollution from defence bases, and in so doing removing the source of PFAS contamination from our food chain and removing the risk to this core meat and food industry.
Sorry, Senator, none of those things are actually our responsibility. None of those things actually fit.
What is your role in...
So marketing and research and development, Senator, those are our responsibilities. And if there's technical issues that we can support any of the participants in this as far as understanding what contributes to it or what can be done, that's absolutely the sort of thing we should be considering. But the relocation and compensation is absolutely not something...
No, I'm not arguing that you should take responsibility for that, but I'm arguing that your function, as we agreed in the first question, is to foster the long-term prosperity of the Australian meat industry, Australian red meat industry. You agreed with that. I'm saying that this is a serious threat.
And our contribution, given that function, would be to ensure that if there's technical information that's required that can be developed through research and development to support these activities, then absolutely we would be prepared to support that. But as far as the examples you were using before around relocation and
no, I'm saying bring your pressure to bear. Sorry, Senator, that we absolutely could not do that, because that's absolutely not in our responsibility. We can't be putting pressure on... You're just watching this... No, Senator, that's not at all right. You're asking me, can we put pressure to bear on the people who are responsible to do this? And no, we are not we can't be taking action like that. The representative organisations... So I'm terrified that Europe could get one contaminated sample And given the way that the UN and the EU are now focusing on decreasing meat consumption, that one contaminated sample could destroy the imports of beef, a huge industry in our state, in our country, into Europe. And then we've also got the Greens with the potential to use this issue to stop the meat industry altogether. So surely there must be something to head this off. I love my lamb and beef.
Which is excellent, Senator, and I'd love to give you as much confidence as possible. And all I can say, I think, is where the issue sits is a very long away from what you just described. And if we can help in providing technical information to support that, then we're certainly happy to hear that.
Senator Robertson, probably one of the places that you might be able to prosecute this with more success might be next week in health, because FSANZ are very much at the forefront of making sure that this issue is dealt with. So that might be a good place to go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Chair.
Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator Roberts.